Hey folks, welcome back to the channel. So I'm back on the Lido body and Squier neck build, Frankenstrat, whatever you want to call it, but it's got this neck that I refretted, and you can watch the first few episodes of this series if you're interested in that. And I've been working on this Lido body ever since. If you have already looked and noticed, I have done some copper shielding on the jack plate cavity, and I'm going to now do some copper shielding in this cavity here so that you can see. I'm only doing a single humbucker, so I'm only going to shield this portion right here. I did do a little bit of extra shielding on the pickguard just to kind of make sure that that entire cavity was going to be covered. But the process is pretty simple. This copper tape, it comes in different widths, but I tend to use this 1-inch width because it's pretty versatile. And it's got a adhesive on it that actually is conductive. So when you stick a piece on, you try to overlap another piece next to it, and as long as they touch, the adhesive is going to carry the current or the shield all the way through. So that's what I'm up to now, just cutting strips. I'll be laying those in the cavity. It's just a tedious process, and you just have to keep going until you get the whole thing covered. Now when you're at this, you really want to make sure you burnish every single part of that tape. And what I mean by burnish is rub it, make sure it's all the way into every crevice, gets all the way into the corners on the sides. Just keep working it until it's completely stuck. The other thing I did before I started this was just make sure that all the little fuzzy router flashing or the buffing compound that's left over from buffing in the body, all that was taken out. Okay, well, I'm going to burn an awful lot of memory card if I do this whole thing, so I'm going to do the rest of this off camera, but you can see I'm overlapping pieces. They're going in different directions. I'm just trying to make sure that I cover pretty much every square inch of this. It doesn't have to be exact, but you want to cover as much as you can, and I'm overlapping like I said. Now when I'm on the bottom, I'll often overlap some of these pieces up onto the side so that when I run a piece down the side, I'll catch that overlap and all that will be connected. So this is a completed job, at least for this part of the cavity, and you'll notice that I did a couple of overlaps onto the face of the body itself. That's mostly so that the shielding that's already on the pickguard can make contact with that and help make this an enclosed sort of a box. That's what really gives you your shielding. When there's a charge on an object, it tends to move to the outside edges. And so when there's a sort of a sphere or a container of some sort, charges will all move to the outsides, and it'll stay away from your electronics that are carrying your signal on the inside. So I'm going to run the jack through this cavity here, and I want to mount this jack plate. All right, there's not a lot of room for movement here. The way this body has been designed, the jack plate fits very snugly. So I'm just gonna mark the holes and drill them out. All right, that has my jack done, and I'm just gonna leave the wires sitting in the cavity for the moment while I get some things ready on the pickguard itself. Before we get too far along on the pickguard, I want to go ahead and mount the neck because that's really necessary for me to locate the pickguard properly. So I'm using a plain neck plate, and I'm using the US length screws. Everything looks like it lines up pretty well. After I did the sanding, it really lines up nicely on this long edge of the body, and it sits in the arc really well for the end of the neck. Now I've been working on the pickguard just a little bit, and I'm not quite done with it obviously, but all I did really was mount the volume pot and mount the humbucker. Nothing's wired, they're just sitting there loose. And I'm gonna probably put a micro switch in because this is a 4-wire humbucker, and I kind of hate to waste the capability to split the coils. Even though it's not quite Tom DeLonge like if you do that, but it's my guitar. Everything's still fitting really, really nice. I've just got the perfect amount of gap in the front of the tremolo. I'll try to get a still picture of this so you can see it, especially once it's done. Now all that's left to do is drill the outside holes for this pickguard. Drilling these holes isn't that hard. It's really just a matter of center punching each one of the holes and drilling them out. Well, there's really not much more to it than that. I've just got to do the other 8 holes. All right, real quick. I've got the holes drilled, got the screws installed. Now the next thing I'm thinking about doing is I'm thinking about putting a micro switch in here, but I need to figure out the location of this switch, and I've got a little micro switch here. I think I'm gonna just drill a hole and I'm gonna try to locate it about halfway in between these 2 points and roughly halfway across on this distance here. I don't know, for some reason I don't like that spot. All right, well that's a lot of messing around, but I think I found a spot that I'm happy with. It's basically on the center line between those 2 points, which is different than what I was saying earlier. And then I've got a spot that I measured that was halfway between these 2 points. I didn't like that. A spot that was measured halfway between the inside edges of each of these parts here. Didn't like that either, so I kind of put it in between. Okay, well I kind of had to sneak up on the right size hole, actually a 1/4 inch. I knew it was, I just tried to get away with drilling the smallest hole possible, and I was using numbered drills and that just didn't work out. So this is not a wiring tutorial, but I wanted to show you where I'm going with this pickguard. So I've got this volume pot. It's a 500K volume pot. It's an old Gibson pot. And I've got this Fleor humbucker, and I've got this coil tap switch. This is an on dual pole, dual throw switch. You don't have to have a dual. I'm only using one side of it. Basically all it does is it takes the red and white wires from the Fleor, short them out with the black wire. Normally in a Fleor, it's kind of like a Seymour Duncan where the black and the green are the 2 outsides of both coils, and the red and white are tied together as it's kind of the start of one and the end of the other coil. If you touch those 2 together, it's going to short out one of the coils and turn that into a single coil pickup. So that's what we're after here. I've also got a treble bleed circuit, so as I turn the volume down, I don't lose treble. I've got a ground wire here, so this ground wire is going to go to the bridge. Now if you can't tell, I'm trying to get rid of some old yellow cloth wire that I've got. I actually have drawn a black line on this and a black line on one of the leads from the jack, just so I know which one's ground, but I am definitely trying to get rid of some of this yellow wire. I just never use it. Now I'm going to go ahead and wire this up. The only thing that's left is to put the jack on the volume pot, and the jack is going to go to the center lug and also to ground. After I connected the jack and the bridge wire, I went ahead and screwed down everything, and I threw a knob on here as well. Everything electronically is good. I already went ahead and plugged it into an amp and tapped on the pickup, and it works. The coil tap works. Basically what it does is it cuts out this top coil, and I run off this bottom one only when the switch is in the up position, and in the bottom position it just runs like a humbucker. So it actually works really well. I'm working on a couple of final touches just before I throw some strings on it and start setting it up. I thought I'd go ahead and put some strap buttons on, so I've put some masking tape here on the end, put a little masking tape up here on the horn, and then I just kind of eyeballed, you know, you can kind of set it up, kind of make a mark halfway down the side, sight down the whole thing, and try to find the center point. You can also run a string line if that helps you find that point there. The one on top isn't quite like that. It should sit at a little bit of an angle to the neck anyway, and it's meant to keep the screw in the center of the meat of this horn. Same process there. I just kind of eyeball it, make a mark this way, find the center, make the mark the other way, and then I've got a little cross that I'm going to use to drill. So let me make those pilot holes, always starting with the center punch. Sometimes to get a drill on this front horn, you have to take the neck off. So I mentioned the end pins that I plan to use. These are kind of a football shaped end pin, so they get installed. They get installed with the football kind of going side to side on the body when it's placed this way, so that it keeps the strap on a little better. And then just to keep the finish from cracking when I install the screw, I'm going to just run an 1/8 inch bit in reverse just a little bit on the very top. There you go, you get the idea. All right, I tossed the neck back on. Now I'm going to install the back plate temporarily. I'm going to take it off after I do this installation, but I want to go ahead and drill the holes so that I can put my drill away once and for all. The way I'm installing this, you can do it multiple ways. I've noticed on a lot of factory strats that this is not exactly square to the body or to the neck, but if you wanted to try to make sure it was, I guess the best thing I could recommend is that you measure from the front of the body down to the top edge of this and make sure that you have the same distance. But that's close enough. I think really the most important thing to me is making sure that I can access the string holes through the provided opening. Other than that, I really don't care because nobody's going to see it. It's worth noting that none of the guitar finish parts that need screws come with them, like pickguard, and this backplate did not, but I keep a stash of screws around just for pickguards. Now I've installed just about everything I can install without the strings. Okay, I'm to the point where I can't really do much else without strings. I actually started stringing this thing up, got 2 strings on it, just the 2 outside strings to try to measure the neck and just make sure that I had enough gap on each side of the fretboard. And I realized that it's a little bit shallow for the saddles. I'd like to raise up the neck pocket just a little bit. So I started making a shim for that. We'll get into that next time. I really appreciate when you guys give me the likes and the comments. I really appreciate all the subscriptions. And like I said, I'll see you guys next time. Peace.